G'day everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into counters for all camels, elephants and mounted archers in AOE4. This is part 2 of my counter series, so if you're brand new or just want a refresher on how to handle the standard units, check out part 1. I've dropped the link in the description. Also keep an eye out for part 3 where we'll cover unique infantry and melee cavalry. Before getting into the units, I will preface by saying that the one unit which counters pretty much everything in this list is the Ottoman Janissary. Deals bonus damage to cavalry from range, so it's essentially a spearman without the weakness to ranged cavalry. I'll list it in the tables, but I won't mention it again out loud. Cavalry archers. There are several different types, each with their unique quirks, but in general, these units are fast, ranged, and make the perfect raiders. They kind of break one of the rules I mentioned in part 1, in the sense that they don't need bonus damage to be considered a hard counter, since they can kite melee infantry all day and still come out on top. Let's start with Mangudai, probably the most infamous mounted archer. They're a nightmare in 4v4s and one of the most complained about units in the game, especially when paired with the Khan and Khan's hunter buffs. Mangudai don't hit hard per shot, but they attack very fast, fire while moving, and are nearly impossible to catch with melee infantry. That makes them devastating raiders while requiring very little micro. They hard counter all melee infantry, no matter their armor or HP. In theory, spears would win a direct fight, but Mangudai never fight fair. With just a little micro, spearmen get melted before they can get close. They also soft counter camel riders, who lack strong ranged armor. Knights soft counter Mangudai, but it can be hard to lock them down. Ranged camels and archers have greater range and are more cost efficient, so act as an effective soft counter. Though archers lack the mobility to chase, so you'll be relying on walls and towers to funnel them into fights. Horsemen are technically a hard counter, due to their speed, armor and cost efficiency. But when you get to death ball proportions, they spend most of their time chasing, moves it down to a soft counter in my eye. Once there's a ranged death ball, you will want to move to archers. Hard counters include mangonels, camel lancers, tower elephants, and anything that throws a javelin. The Rus horse archer thrives on mobility and tactical finesse, not brute force. Their speed and low cost makes them perfect for hit-and-run tactics, map control, and punishing exposed eco lines. If you need to respond to a raid or kite an advancing force, horse archers have you covered. They don't deal bonus damage, but they still hard counter melee infantry, including spears, if you can kite properly. They are soft countered by archers, and knights can run them down once they close the gap. Like Mangudai, they get shut down by horsemen, camel lancers, tower elephants, and javelins. Onna-Musha are the only high mobility crossbow in the game. They cost a fair bit extra, do slightly less damage, but they make up for it with increased range and mobility. Like all crossbows, they hard counter heavy units. With their high speed, bonus damage, they even make short work of heavy cavalry including war elephants. They're the only crossbows in the game that can effectively kite knights and camel lancers without a front line. They also hard counter light melee infantry like spears, Lanchconnect and Musafadi warriors. Due to higher range and mobility, kiting is actually an effective option against Mangudai, though only if the Khan Signal Arrow, Khan's Hunter and Yam Network buffs aren't in play. They are soft countered by archers and crossbows, purely due to cost efficiency, and will trade poorly into most other mounted archers. Horsemen are the hard counters with bonus damage, mobility and decent ranged armor, plus mangonels, javelins, camel archers and tower elephants. The Akinji is pretty similar to the Rus horse archer. Low HP, cheap, except this fires 2 arrows in rapid succession, making it deadly against unarmoured targets. However, it's locked behind a vizier point, so you're not likely to see it often. It shares the same counters as the Rus horse archer, so we won't rehash that here. Another unit you won't likely see very often, as it requires a specific age-up choice to unlock. It's an interesting ranged cavalry unit that throws a javelin instead of firing arrows. The Genitour has low base damage per shot, but solid ranged armor, bonus damage to ranged units, and it's cheap to mass. It hard counters all ranged units, including archers, crossbows, hand cannons, and even ranged cavalry including tower elephants and camel archers. It also hard counters spears and other light melee infantry. Though they have the ability to kite men-at-arms, They deal such low damage that it's barely worth the time, so I'm calling this a soft counter. It's soft countered in turn by knights and camel riders, while horsemen, camel lancers and mangonels are the hard counters. Black Rider is ranged cavalry taken to the extreme. Mobility, high damage and heavy armor all combine to make this one of the most powerful ranged units in the game, and that's before we take into account its active ability which allows it to fire while moving for short periods of time. It's a highly population efficient unit, but not necessarily a cost efficient one, meaning if you are at or near population capacity, then it's a great choice to maximise your army's overall power, but if you are struggling to max out your army for a direct fight, then cheaper units may be a better choice. The Black Rider will make short work of all melee infantry, war elephants and siege. They also soft counter knights and melee camels with kiting. If you are on equal upgrades, archers will be more cost efficient, though you'll need a lot of them. As a unit with the heavy, ranged and cavalry tags, it does have a lot of hard counters. Horsemen, Onna-Musha and Genitours all deal bonus damage and have the mobility to keep up, while crossbows, tower elephants and javelins deal substantial bonus damage from a distance. Camels are available in several varieties, but all come with a built-in debuff that reduces damage dealt by all nearby horse-based cavalry by 20%. This makes them amazing as army support. The Camel Lancer is essentially a knight. It has high armor and a charge attack that deals higher damage. They act as a hard counter to all horse-based cavalry like horsemen, knights, as well as unique ranged cavalry like Mangudai and horse archers. Soft counters archers and men-at-arms, though as with knights you could easily call it a hard counter to archers. They will also trade well into any siege except for the Reboldequin. Although the Camel Unease debuff doesn't apply to elephants, Camel Lancers still deal bonus damage. While it's not a good enough trade to call it a soft counter, I wouldn't be afraid to take a fight against war elephants if you really had to. Hard countered by crossbows, spears, and Onna-Musha, who suffer the debuff but deal bonus damage in return. Musafadi warriors also work well, though like spears they don't have the mobility to choose the engagement. Camel Rider is a tough one, as there are some significant armor upgrades which affect some of the soft counters. As with all camels, the Camel Rider does exceptionally well against horsemen and knights. It also gets bonus damage to siege, so it does well against all but the Reboldequin. It also soft counters crossbows and, surprisingly enough, elephants, including the war elephant, who lack the mobility to get away and suffer bonus damage. The Camel Rider might look like a knight replacement, but it's actually a light cavalry with no base armor, at least until you start getting those unique upgrades. This means at first it's actually soft countered by both men-at-arms and archers, until the armor upgrades come through, at which point they become, in my opinion, a neutral or even slightly positive trade. It also trades poorly into ranged cavalry. They are hard countered by spears, who deal significant bonus damage. The Desert Raider is a really interesting and versatile unit. The ability to actively switch from range to melee attacks means you can choose the best weapon for the fight at hand. Plus, they can build siege. They hard counter spears which can never close the gap, as well as heavy melee infantry, due to high damage and melee armor. Desert Raiders deal bonus damage to cavalry while in melee mode. As such, they counter knights. However, due to their cost and their range tag, they are actually soft countered by horsemen, who deal bonus damage against them while being more cost efficient. Due to their low ranged armor, they are soft countered by archers. Hard counters include javelins and technically mangonels, though without a front line to defend the siege, this will go in the complete opposite direction. This unit is weird in a good way. It's the only cavalry that gets bonus damage against its own counter, so it both hard counters and is hard countered by spears. However, when kiting, it performs well against all melee infantry. Camel archers are expensive, but come with very high HP for a ranged unit, so they can afford to take a few hits before having to retreat. They soft counter knights and most ranged cavalry except the Genitour, though they do better when they have a front line. Like other ranged cav, it's eaten alive by horsemen, and is soft countered by archers. Other hard counters include tower elephants, javelins, mangonels, and the Genitour. Elephants are some of the scariest units on the battlefield. The presence of just a few can completely turn the tide of a fight. Massive health pools, impressive armor, and multiple attacks make them like mobile siege engines. The war elephant is basically a beefy, less mobile knight that has insane HP, high armor, and 3 separate melee attacks, including one area attack that does bonus damage to buildings and can even bring down stone walls. With 2 spearmen mounted on its back, it will make short work of horsemen, knights, and any other cavalry that dare to come in close to fight. With the surprising exception, which is the Camel Rider, which performs well against the war elephant and becomes one of its soft counters. It also does well against siege, with the exception of bombards, which deal bonus damage, and Revoldequins, though without a frontline, the elephant still wins. Archers are unable to deal significant damage to the war elephant, even while kiting. Though no bonuses are involved, this is an easy victory. Men-at-Arms will trade efficiently, though it's not an overly convincing win. It's a heavy unit, so is weak to crossbows, and as cavalry, it is also hard countered by spears, which deal additional damage on top of the usual cavalry multiplier. The Tower Elephant is a ranged cavalry which can fire while moving. It also has a tusk attack that deals bonus damage to buildings and can bring down stone walls. In its base form, it deals no bonus damage except to buildings, but after an upgrade in Imperial, can swap out the 2 mounted archers for crossbows, dealing bonus damage to heavy units. Despite appearances, the Tower Elephant is not classed as heavy. This means crossbows do no additional damage. In fact, due to their obscene ranged armor, they hard counter both archers and crossbows. Before the upgrade, Tower Elephants are soft countered by men-at-arms and hard countered by knights, camel lancers, and camel riders. And unfortunately, the upgrade only improves the situation a little, with men-at-arms moving up to be soft countered, and knights just barely moving into a soft counter. Elephants are also soft countered by bombards and hand cannoneers. Bombards deal bonus damage but aren't cost effective enough to be a hard counter. The hard counters to watch for are spearmen and horsemen, who both have higher mobility and significant bonus damage, plus javelin throwers who have a decent ranged armor of their own and significant bonus damage which they can deal at greater range. This is the Tower Elephant's big brother. It swaps the crossbows or archers for hand cannons, trading bonus damage for sheer DPS, over 57 per second. It's produced automatically from a landmark, so it's hard to place a value on it. However, a normal Tower Elephant is 1,000 resources, and the difference between a crossbow and a hand cannon is 120, so I estimate its value at around 1240 res. Its counters are the same as the regular version, so I won't repeat myself. As you can see, the counter system starts becoming a bit more complicated once you move away from the base unit. It's no longer as simple as bonus damage plus cost efficiency equals a counter. Otherwise, spears would counter 3/4 of this list. Fighting becomes very important, and factors like range and abilities begin to play a big role in the outcome of battles. Hopefully this has expanded your understanding of unit counters in AOE4, and given you the tools to fight some of the more annoying unique units which commonly come up. That's it from me. See you next time.